Kira's claws scraped against the cold metal floor as she dragged herself toward the feeding trough. The neural collar around her neck hummed with electricity, sending sharp jolts through her nervous system whenever she moved too quickly or showed any sign of defiance. Her once magnificent silver fur had dulled to a dirty gray, matted with the grime of countless cycles in the fighting pits. The arena above echoed with the roars of the crowd as another Thraxian slave was torn apart for their entertainment. Kira had stopped counting the deaths years ago. In the slave quarters beneath the Vexathara Colosseum, death was as common as breathing, and far more merciful than continued existence. She was Lyrian, one of the last of her kind. Her species had been renowned throughout the galaxy for their intelligence, their capacity for complex emotions, and their fierce loyalty to those they loved. These same qualities that had once made them respected ambassadors and mediators now made them prized slaves for the Vexthara Empire. The Vexthara were a species of cruel efficiency, tall insectoid beings with chitinous armor and compound eyes that saw everything in cold calculation. They had conquered 17 star systems in the past century, enslaving entire civilizations with the same methodical precision they applied to everything else. Their empire thrived on suffering, and they had perfected the art of breaking spirits while keeping bodies functional. Kira remembered freedom only in fragments now. Flashes of running through the crystal forests of her homeworld, the warmth of her pack family's embrace, the pride in her mother's eyes when she had solved her first mathematical theorem at the age of 6 standard years. But those memories felt like dreams from another lifetime, growing dimmer with each passing cycle. The feeding trough contained the usual gray slop, a nutritional paste designed to keep slaves alive but never satisfied. Kira forced herself to eat, knowing that weakness meant death and death meant she would never see her homeworld again. Somewhere deep inside her broken spirit, a tiny flame of hope still flickered. Not hope for rescue or escape, for such thoughts had been beaten out of her long ago, but hope that perhaps someday she might simply be allowed to die with dignity. The other slaves around her were a collection of the galaxy's conquered peoples. Broad-shouldered Karathi miners who had once carved cities from asteroids, graceful ethereal dancers whose people had created art that spanned light years, stocky dwarven engineers whose innovations had powered half the galaxy's technology, all reduced to this, broken beings scratching for scraps in the darkness. A commotion erupted from the arena above. The sounds were different today, less cheering and more confusion. Heavy footsteps thundered down the stone steps leading to the slave quarters. Vexthara guards appeared, their mandibles clicking in agitation. Behind them came Overseer Zekth, the massive Vexthara who managed the slave operations. "New acquisition," Zekth's translator buzzed. "This one is different. It claims to be from a species called human." Kira looked up from her trough with mild curiosity. In her 15 years of captivity, she had seen dozens of species dragged into these pits. Each new acquisition was a reminder that the Vexthara's hunger for conquest knew no bounds. The guards shoved someone forward, and Kira got her first look at the newcomer. It was bipedal, like herself, but different from any species she had encountered. Its skin was a warm brown color, and it stood only slightly taller than herself. What struck her most was its posture. Despite the chains, despite being surrounded by armed guards, this creature held its head high. Its dark eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of its surroundings with sharp intelligence. Most new slaves arrived broken or terrified. This one arrived angry. "I want to speak to whoever's in charge," the human said, its voice carrying clearly despite the universal translator's mechanical tone. "This is a violation of the Galactic Accords, and when the Terran Federation finds out about this, there will be consequences." Several of the guards made chittering sounds that Kira recognized as Vexathara laughter. Zekth approached the human, looming over it with his full 3-meter height. "Your Federation is not here, meat," Zekth clicked. "Here you are property. You will fight. You will entertain our citizens, and when you die, you will be forgotten." The human looked up at the massive overseer without flinching. "No," it said simply. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Around the slave quarters, conversation stopped. Even the guards seemed taken aback by the casual defiance. Zeketh reached for his neural prod, a device designed to deliver excruciating pain without permanent damage. He touched it to the human's shoulder and activated it. The human's body convulsed, but it remained standing. When the shock ended, it looked directly into Zekth's compound eyes. "Is that all you've got?" Kira watched in fascination as Zekth increased the setting and applied the prod again. The human fell to one knee but pushed itself back up almost immediately. Blood trickled from its nose, but its expression remained defiant. Interesting, Zekth mused. You will make a fine addition to tomorrow's games. He gestured to the guards. Cell block 7. No rations until it learns submission. As the guards dragged the human away, it caught sight of Kira watching from across the chamber. For just a moment their eyes met, and Kira saw something she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. Not the desperate, clawing hope of the newly enslaved, but something else entirely. A calm, steady certainty that this situation was temporary. The human smiled at her. Actually smiled, before disappearing into the maze of cells that housed the gladiators. Kira returned to her meal, but her mind was racing. In 15 years of slavery, she had never seen anyone react to their first day like that. Most species took weeks to even understand their situation, and months to accept it. This human had assessed, adapted, and begun planning within minutes. That night, lying on the stone floor of her cell, Kira found herself thinking about that moment of eye contact. The human had looked at her not with pity or disgust at her condition, but with recognition. As if it saw not a broken slave, but a person who deserved better. For the first time in years, Kira dreamed of something other than nightmares. The arena drums thundered across the Colosseum as 50,000 Vexithara spectators filled the massive structure. Kira pressed her face against the bars of the preparation cage, watching as the sand was raked clean for the day's entertainment. Blood from yesterday's games had been scrubbed away, leaving only pristine white sand that would soon run red again. She had been selected as today's opening act, matched against a Karathi warrior who had killed 3 opponents in his last fight. The Karathi were known for their brute strength and thick hides, making them nearly impossible for most species to defeat in hand-to-hand combat. The betting odds displayed on the arena's information boards showed her chances at roughly 1,000 to 1 against survival. The irony was not lost on her that after 15 years of careful survival, she would likely die on the same day she had met the first interesting being in over a decade. The human had been housed 3 cells away from her own, and through the night she had listened to it systematically testing every inch of its confinement. Not frantically like most new prisoners, but methodically, as if conducting a scientific experiment. First time in the main arena, Kira turned to find the human standing in the adjacent preparation cage. Up close, she could see details she had missed in the dim lighting of the slave quarters. Its hair was dark and cropped short in a practical style. Scars crossed its knuckles, suggesting it was no stranger to violence. But what struck her most were its eyes, alert and calculating, constantly observing and processing information. No, she managed to say. You? First time in any arena, the human replied. I'm Marcus, by the way. Marcus Chen, formerly Lieutenant Commander of the Terran Federation Navy. The casual way it introduced itself, as if they were meeting at a social gathering rather than waiting to die for entertainment, caught Kira off guard. I am Kira, formerly nothing of importance. Marcus moved closer to the bars separating their cages. Everyone's of importance, Kira. What did you do before this? I was a student. Mathematics and theoretical physics at the University of New Lyria. The words felt strange on her tongue. She had not spoken of her past in years. A scientist, Marcus nodded approvingly. We're going to need that. Need it for what? For getting out of here. Kira stared at him in disbelief. Getting out? This is the Vexthera Empire. There is no getting out. There is only surviving until you don't. Marcus examined the lock on his cage with professional interest. See, that's where you're wrong. Every system has weaknesses. Every fortress has flaws. The Vexthara have made one critical mistake. What mistake? They captured a human. Before Kira could ask what that meant, the arena gates opened. Guards prodded them forward with neural prods, herding them into the blazing artificial sunlight of the Colosseum floor. The roar of the crowd was deafening, a wall of sound that crashed over them like a physical force. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena in the Vexthara's clicking language, introducing the combatants. Kira's Karathi opponent emerged from the opposite gate, a massive brute covered in natural armor plating and sporting 4 arms, each ending in claws that could tear through steel. The rules were simple. Fight until one was dead. No weapons, no mercy, no escape. As they were positioned at opposite ends of the arena, Marcus caught Kira's attention. When I give you the signal, Run to the eastern wall and stay low. What signal? What are you planning? Something they won't expect. Marcus rolled his shoulders, loosening up like an athlete preparing for competition. Humans have a saying, the best defense is a good offense. The starting horn blared. The Karathi charged immediately, covering the distance between them in seconds. Kira dove sideways, narrowly avoiding a swipe that would have taken her head off. She rolled to her feet and began backing away, following her usual strategy of staying mobile until her opponent exhausted themselves. But Marcus did the opposite. He ran straight at the Karathi. The crowd fell silent, then erupted in disbelieving laughter. No species was stupid enough to meet a Karathi in direct combat. It was suicide. Marcus didn't slow down. As the Karathi swung its massive fist, Marcus dropped into a slide, passing between the alien's legs and coming up behind it. Before the Karathi could turn, Marcus had grabbed its tail and was climbing up its back like it was a piece of exercise equipment. The Karathi spun and thrashed, trying to dislodge the human clinging to its shoulders. Marcus wrapped his arms around the alien's thick neck and began applying pressure. Not choking it, Kira realized, but targeting something else entirely. The Karathi's movements became erratic, then sluggish. Within moments, the massive warrior collapsed face first into the sand. The arena fell completely silent. Marcus stood up, brushing sand from his clothes. He looked up at the royal box where the Vexthera nobility sat in stunned silence. That was a blood choke, he called out, his voice carrying clearly in the hushed arena. I cut off blood flow to his brain. He's unconscious, not dead. In about 30 seconds, he'll wake up with nothing worse than a headache. Kira stared in amazement as the Karathi's chest began rising and falling steadily. In 15 years of arena combat, she had never seen anyone defeat an opponent without killing them. Why? She whispered. Marcus looked at her with those steady, intelligent eyes. Because taking a life should never be entertainment. And because I wanted them to know that humans fight differently. The crowd began to murmur, unsure how to react. The arena masters frantically consulted their rulebooks. Technically, the human had won the match, but no one knew what to do with a victor who refused to kill. Overseer Zekth descended to the arena floor, his mandibles clicking in agitation. You will finish your opponent or you will be executed for violating the terms of combat. Marcus stood his ground. I won. Your rules say fight until one can't continue. He can't continue. The crowd demands death. Then give them yours. Marcus's voice carried a quiet authority that Kira had never heard from a slave. I've defeated your champion without weapons, without armor, and without killing. Either you honor your own rules or you admit that Vexthera honor is worthless. The accusation of dishonor hit the overseer like a physical blow. In Vexthera culture, honor was everything, even more important than cruelty. To be publicly accused of breaking their own rules was a humiliation worse than death. Zekth looked up at the royal box, seeking guidance. After a long moment, a figure in the box gave a slight nod. The human wins, Zekth announced reluctantly. Both gladiators returned to quarters. As they were escorted from the arena, Kira found herself walking beside Marcus. The crowd's confused murmur followed them through the gates. How did you know that would work? She asked. Psychology, Marcus replied. Every species has cultural pressure points. The Vexthera value honor above everything else. Challenge that, and you can make them act against their own interests. And if you had been wrong? Marcus smiled grimly. Then we'd both be dead, but I'd have made my point. Back in the slave quarters, word of the humans' victory spread quickly. Slaves from dozens of species gathered around Marcus, all asking the same question. How? Simple, Marcus explained. I fought to win, not to kill. And I did it in a way that forced them to question their own system. An old ethereal with missing wings asked, what does this accomplish? Tomorrow there will be more fights, more death. Maybe, Marcus acknowledged. But now they know that not everyone will play by their rules. And doubt, once it starts, spreads like a virus. Kira found herself believing him. For the first time in years, she began to think that maybe, just maybe, there was another way to live than simply surviving until death. That night, she dreamed of running free through crystal forests again. 3 weeks passed since Marcus's first victory, and the atmosphere in the slave quarters had changed in ways both subtle and profound. Where once there had been only the defeated silence of broken spirits, now there were whispered conversations. Where once slaves had avoided eye contact with each other and their captors, now they watched everything with new attention. Marcus had won 4 more fights, each one a masterclass in strategy over strength. He defeated a poisonous Zephyrian by goading it into exhausting its venom sacs on the sand. He outmaneuvered a pack of feral hunters by using their pack instincts against them, turning them on each other before subduing the last one without permanent harm. Each victory was accompanied by his refusal to deliver a killing blow, and each time he publicly challenged the Vexthara's twisted idea of entertainment. Kira had survived her own matches, but barely. The difference was that now she fought with purpose beyond mere survival. Marcus had begun teaching her and several other slaves basic principles of human military strategy during the brief periods when the guards were changing shifts. The key is understanding your enemy's psychology, Marcus explained during one of their clandestine meetings in the washing facilities. Around him sat a diverse group. Kira, an ancient dwarven engineer named Thorek who had built stargates before his capture, a young ethereal named Liz whose song magic had been silenced by neural dampeners, and a hulking Karathi named Gex, who had been won over by Marcus's mercy in their fight. Every species has behavioral patterns programmed by evolution and culture, Marcus continued, keeping his voice low. The Vexthara are hive-minded insects who value order above all else. They cannot comprehend individual initiative because their entire society is based on predetermined roles. Thorek stroked his matted beard thoughtfully. But knowing their weakness doesn't give us weapons or free us from these cursed collars. Marcus touched his own neural collar, a device that could deliver debilitating pain or even death at the press of a button. Actually, it does both. Thorek, you said you designed energy management systems before your capture. Fusion cores, plasma conduits, quantum batteries. What of it? These collars run on battery power, don't they? They have to be recharged somehow. A glint of understanding entered the dwarf's eyes. Every 7 cycles they take us to the recharge stations. Standard induction charging, I'd guess. Can you overload one? With the right materials. But the explosion would kill whoever's wearing it. Not if you time it right, Marcus said. And not if you can channel the energy discharge outward instead of inward. Kira felt a chill of realization. You're planning something. We all are, Marcus corrected. This isn't my escape plan. It's ours. Lee spoke for the first time, her voice hoarse from disuse. Why should we trust you? How do we know this isn't some elaborate Vexthara test? Marcus was quiet for a moment, then pulled up his shirt. Across his back were dozens of scars, some fresh, some old. But what drew their attention was a tattoo partially obscured by the scarring, a blue and green planet surrounded by stars, with text in an alien script beneath it. This is Earth, he said simply. My homeworld. The text says no one gets left behind. It's the motto of the Terran Search and Rescue Corps. I was a member before I joined the Navy. Thorek examined the tattoo closely. You were rescue? 17 years. Asteroid mining accidents, deep space emergencies, hostile environment extractions. My job was to go into impossible situations and bring people home alive. How many? Kira asked. 4,732 successful rescues. 0 fatalities under my watch. Marcus's voice carried quiet pride. So when I say we're getting out of here, all of us, that's not hope talking. That's professional assessment. The group exchanged glances. Around them, the air seemed to vibrate with possibility. What do you need us to do? Gex rumbled, the first time the Karathi had spoken in their meetings. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since her capture, Kira saw something that made her believe in miracles. I need Thorek to map the power grid for the entire facility. Every conduit, every junction, every backup system. Place despite your dampeners, you can still sense electromagnetic fields, can't you? The ethereal nodded reluctantly. I need you to identify which guards have master override devices for the collars. They'll have a different energy signature than standard equipment. And me? Kira asked. You're going to help me do something that's going to seem completely insane. Marcus turned to face her fully. We're going to request a meeting with the arena master. The next morning, Marcus did exactly that. During the daily inspection of the gladiator cells, he formally requested an audience with Arena Master Vrektal, citing matters of mutual benefit regarding arena entertainment. The guards laughed at first, but Marcus persisted through 3 days of asking until finally, more out of curiosity than anything else, the request was granted. Arena Master Vrektal was ancient by Vexithara standards, his chitinous armor scarred by decades of overseeing the Empire's most prestigious death sport venue. He received Marcus in his private office overlooking the arena floor, accompanied by Overseer Zekth and a full complement of guards. "Speak quickly, Meat," Rectal clicked. "I have executions to schedule." Marcus stood at attention every inch the military officer. "Arena Master, I believe I can increase your profits by 300% within 1 month." The statement hung in the air. Rectal's compound eyes fixed on the human with sudden interest. "Explain." "Your current arena format is stale," Marcus said bluntly. "Gladiator fights gladiator until one dies. It's predictable. Your attendance numbers have been declining for the past 2 years." Zekth bristled at the insult, but Rectal raised a claw for silence. The arena master's profit margins were indeed suffering, though he hadn't expected a slave to notice. "What do you propose? Team competitions, survival challenges, strategy-based contests where intelligence matters as much as strength." Marcus gestured toward the arena. "Right now you're wasting resources. Every dead gladiator is lost investment. What if instead of killing the losers you created ongoing storylines, rivalries, comebacks?" "The crowd wants blood," Rectal stated. "The crowd wants excitement. Blood is just one way to provide it. But sustained drama, ongoing narratives, unexpected victories by underdogs, that creates loyalty. Fans who return week after week to see what happens next." Marcus pulled out a crude diagram he'd scratched onto a piece of metal. "Picture this. Teams of mixed species working together to overcome seemingly impossible challenges. The audience picks favorites, bets on long-term outcomes, becomes emotionally invested in the gladiators' stories." Rectal studied the diagram. Despite himself, the old arena master was intrigued. The human's suggestions addressed real problems he'd been struggling with. "And why would you help us improve our business?" Marcus met his gaze steadily. "Because if you're going to force me to fight, I'd rather fight in competitions that test my actual skills instead of meaningless death matches." It was the truth, but not the whole truth. What Marcus didn't say was that team competitions would require gladiators to be housed together for training, moved around the facility more frequently, and given access to equipment and areas normally restricted to staff, all of which would provide opportunities that lone prisoners locked in individual cells would never have. "I will consider this proposal," Rectal decided. "You will prepare a detailed presentation for next week." As Marcus was escorted back to the slave quarters, Kira saw the satisfied expression on his face and knew that somehow, impossibly, the first phase of whatever he had planned had succeeded. That evening, he gathered their small group again. "It worked?" Thoric asked. "Better than I hoped. We've got 1 week to prepare the most convincing presentation of our lives, and while we're doing that, we're going to map every weakness this place has." Kira felt something she had almost forgotten existed stirring in her chest. It was hope, but different from the desperate hope that had sustained her through years of captivity. This was hope backed by planning, skill, and the quiet confidence of someone who had never failed to bring his people home. For the first time in 15 years, Kira began to believe that she might see her homeworld again. The presentation took place in Arena Master Rectal's private conference chamber, a opulent room decorated with trophies from famous arena deaths spanning 3 centuries. Kira stood beside Marcus as they faced not only the arena master, but also a panel of Vexthara officials, entertainment executives, and betting syndicate representatives. Marcus had spent the week preparing meticulously, but not just for the presentation. Each night, while pretending to work on arena proposals, their small group had actually been gathering intelligence. Thoric had memorized the complete electrical system layout by observing power fluctuations during his daily work assignments. Lise had identified 17 guards carrying master override devices. Even Gex had contributed, noting guard rotation patterns and identifying which supervisors never varied their routines. "Honored Arena Master," Marcus began, his tone respectful but confident. "What I'm proposing will revolutionize arena entertainment across the entire Vexthara Empire." He gestured to crude but detailed diagrams scratched onto metal plates. Traditional gladiatorial combat is limited by its binary outcome. Someone wins, someone dies, the story ends. But observe these attendance figures. The numbers he presented were accurate, pulled from overheard conversations among arena staff. Attendance had indeed declined 23% over the past 2 years. "The problem isn't lack of violence," Marcus continued. "It's lack of emotional investment. Your audience watches strangers kill strangers, They have no reason to care about the outcome beyond momentary bloodlust. Rektal's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Proceed. Team-based competitions create something traditional arena combat cannot: ongoing narratives. Imagine gladiators who must work together to survive obstacle courses designed to test intelligence, endurance, strategy, and adaptability. The audience develops preferences, forms attachments, follows story arcs across multiple events. Marcus pointed to specific sections of his diagrams. Week 1. Teams of mixed species face survival challenges in different environments. Desert survival, Arctic conditions, urban warfare scenarios. Viewers see how different alien abilities complement each other. The betting syndicate representative, a scarred Vexithara named Ketfi, leaned forward with interest. How does this affect wagering opportunities? Instead of simple win-lose bets, you create complex betting matrices. Which team member will solve the puzzle first? Will the team choose cooperation or betrayal when resources are limited? Will they save a wounded teammate or abandon them? Marcus's eyes gleamed. You could run dozens of sub-bets within a single competition. The room buzzed with quiet conversation as the officials discussed the proposal among themselves. Kira forced herself to remain perfectly still, knowing that their entire escape plan hinged on this moment. There are logistical concerns, Overseer Zekth interjected. Housing gladiators together increases security risks. Training facilities would need modification. Equipment costs? All manageable, Marcus replied smoothly. The increased revenue from higher attendance and expanded betting opportunities would offset initial investments within 3 months. Plus, gladiators who survive longer provide better return on acquisition costs. Arena Master Vrektal stood and walked to the chamber's viewing window overlooking the arena floor. For long moments he said nothing, simply watching maintenance crews prepare the sand for the afternoon standard death matches. Finally, he turned back to the group. We will implement a trial program. 1 month. 6 teams of 4 gladiators each. You will design the first 3 competitions. Marcus bowed formally. I am honored by your trust, Arena Master. Do not mistake pragmatism for trust, human. You will compete in these events yourself. Should the experiment fail, you will die in the traditional manner. Understood. As they were escorted back to the slave quarters, Kira marveled at Marcus's composure. He had just gambled all their lives on a plan that required perfect execution, and he showed no sign of stress whatsoever. Phase 2 begins now, he told their group that evening. Thorek, you're going to volunteer for the arena modification work detail. You'll have access to maintenance areas throughout the facility. And do what exactly? Map the emergency systems. Every facility this size has evacuation protocols, backup power systems, and automated security responses. Find them. Liz, Marcus continued, I need you to start singing again. The ethereal recoiled as if he'd struck her. The dampeners, they cause pain when I try. I know. But ethereal song magic doesn't just influence emotions. It can interfere with electronic systems if modulated correctly. We need you to find frequencies that disrupt the neural collar control signals. That could kill me. It could. Or it could save all of us. Gek shifted uncomfortably. What about me? You're going to help me select our teammates. We need gladiators who can think under pressure, who won't panic when the real plan starts, and who have specific skills we'll need. Over the following week, the arena underwent rapid modifications. New obstacles appeared on the floor. Walls that could be raised and lowered, environmental simulators, puzzle stations requiring multiple species to operate. Marcus found himself in the unprecedented position of a slave giving orders to Vexithara technicians, all under the supervision of increasingly nervous guards. The team selection process was revealing. Marcus chose carefully. A Zephyrian scout named Slicks, whose species had natural camouflage abilities. A pair of bonded Karathi siblings who fought with perfect coordination. An elderly dwarven engineer who had worked with Thorek before their capture. And others whose specific abilities would complement their escape plan. What the Vexthera didn't realize was that every practice session was actually a reconnaissance mission. Each team exercise allowed them to test security responses, observe guard behavior, and identify blind spots in the facility's surveillance system. Lice made the breakthrough on the 4th day. While enduring the agony of the neural dampeners, she discovered a harmonic frequency that caused temporary interference with the collar control signals, not enough to disable them completely, but enough to create brief windows of reduced sensitivity. 2 minutes and 17 seconds, she reported, her voice hoarse from the effort. That's how long I can disrupt the signal before the dampeners overload and potentially kill me. That's enough, Marcus assured her. More than enough. Thorek's discoveries were equally crucial. The facility's emergency systems included automated lockdown procedures designed to contain riots or natural disasters. More importantly, the backup power systems were centrally controlled from a maintenance station in the lower levels. Cut power to the collar control grid, Thorek explained, and every collar in the facility goes into emergency mode. They can't deliver shocks or track locations for approximately 40 minutes while the backup systems reset. 40 minutes to get everyone out, Kira murmured. Not everyone, Marcus corrected quietly. Getting 500 slaves out of a heavily fortified facility without transportation isn't possible. But getting a small group to the communications center and the vehicle bay? That we can do. The weight of his words settled over the group. They were planning to save themselves and leave the others behind. Gex spoke the thought they were all having. The others will die when the Vexithara discover we've escaped. Maybe, Marcus acknowledged. Or maybe they'll be transferred to other facilities where they'll live longer. Or maybe the chaos we create will give others opportunities to escape. But trying to save everyone guarantees saving no one. Kira felt a stab of guilt, but she also understood the mathematics. A successful escape by a small group might inspire others. A failed escape by a large group would only result in mass executions and increased security. There's something else, Marcus added. The Terran Federation has been looking for me for 6 months. My ship went down during a deep space rescue mission. If we can reach the communications center and send a distress signal with proper Federation codes, help will come. How much help? Thorek asked. Marcus smiled grimly. The kind that turns entire star systems into diplomatic incidents. The Federation takes a very dim view of anyone enslaving their citizens. The first team competition was scheduled for the following week. To the Vexithara, it would be an entertainment experiment with potential for profit. To Marcus and his fellow conspirators, it would be the beginning of the end of the Vexithara's perfect security record. As Kira lay in her cell that night, she thought about the others who would be left behind if their plan succeeded. The guilt was almost overwhelming. But for the first time since her capture, she was thinking beyond mere survival. She was thinking about hope, about justice, and about the possibility that sometimes the only way to save everyone was to save someone first. Tomorrow the real fight would begin. The arena had been transformed into something unprecedented in Vexithara history. Where once there had been simple sand and stone, now stood a complex maze of obstacles, puzzles, and environmental challenges. 6 teams of 4 gladiators each stood at starting positions around the perimeter, while 50,000 spectators filled the stands with an energy different from the usual bloodthirsty anticipation. Kira surveyed her teammates one final time. Besides Marcus, their team included Thorek and a Zephyrian scout named Slicks, who could blend into almost any background. Each member had been chosen for specific abilities that would be crucial when their real mission began. The other teams were equally diverse. Korathi strength paired with ethereal grace, dwarven engineering combined with reptilian cunning. What the audience didn't know was that several gladiators across multiple teams were part of Marcus's extended network. Not everyone knew the complete plan, but enough knew their individual roles to make the difference between success and catastrophe. Arena Master Vrektal stood in the royal box, his compound eyes scanning the transformed arena with obvious pride. Beside him, various Vexithara officials and off-world dignitaries watched with interest. The betting windows had seen unprecedented activity, with complex wagers being placed on everything from individual performance to team dynamics. Citizens of the Empire, Vrektal's voice boomed across the arena. Today we witness a new era of entertainment. 6 teams will face 3 challenges designed to test not just strength, but intelligence, cooperation, and survival instinct. The crowd roared approval. The first competition Marcus had designed carefully. It appeared to be a straightforward obstacle course requiring teams to navigate through a series of environmental zones. A water section, a climbing wall, a puzzle that needed all 4 species' unique abilities, and finally a maze that could only be solved through cooperation. What the Vexithara didn't realize was that every obstacle had been positioned to provide cover for specific actions. The water section would mask Lyse's harmonic interference with the collar control system. The climbing wall offered visual obstruction for Thorek to access maintenance panels. The puzzle station was positioned directly above the facility's main power junction. "Begin," Rektal commanded. All 6 teams launched into motion. The crowd immediately began cheering for favorites, caught up in the excitement of this new form of entertainment. For the first time in arena history, the audience was rooting for gladiators to succeed, rather than simply waiting for them to die. Marcus's team reached the water section first. As they waded through the chest-deep pool, Lise began her song. To the spectators, it sounded like an ethereal work chant, common among laborer species. In reality, she was generating the precise harmonic frequencies needed to interfere with collar signals. The effect was immediate, but subtle. Across all 6 teams, gladiators' neural collars flickered almost imperceptibly. The guards monitoring the control systems noticed minor fluctuations but attributed them to water interference. 2 minutes, 17 seconds starting now, Lise whispered as they climbed out of the pool. The climbing wall required teams to work together, with stronger members boosting lighter ones to reach handholds 20 meters above the arena floor. As Thorek was lifted toward the top, he pressed his hand against what appeared to be a decorative panel, but was actually an access point to the arena's environmental controls. His fingers, trained by decades of engineering work, quickly identified the connections he needed. Working by touch alone, he began rerouting power flow through the building's electrical grid. To anyone watching, he was simply struggling to reach the next handhold. Meanwhile, other teams were making genuine progress through the obstacles. The competition was real enough to maintain the illusion, but Marcus had designed it so that multiple approaches could succeed. The key was ensuring his team reached specific positions at predetermined times. At the puzzle station, 4 different control panels required simultaneous operation by different species to open a passage to the final maze. Each panel was designed to respond only to specific biological markers: Lyrian neural patterns, dwarven bioelectric signatures, human cognitive responses, and Zephyrian chemical traces. As they worked the puzzle, Marcus caught sight of movement in the royal box. Arena Master Rektal was gesturing excitedly to his guests, clearly pleased with how the new format was being received. Betting activity scrolled across information displays as viewers wagered on increasingly complex outcomes. 15 seconds, Lise warned quietly. Her song magic was reaching its limit, the puzzle completed with perfect timing. As the passage opened to the final maze, Lise stopped singing and collapsed as if from exertion. The collar signals returned to normal strength just as the guards' attention was focused on the dramatic conclusion of the first challenge. The maze required teams to split up, with members taking different paths and communicating to find the exit. Marcus had designed it based on the actual layout of the facility's lower levels, disguised as an entertainment challenge. As they navigated the passages, he and his teammates were actually rehearsing escape routes they might need within hours. Marcus's team emerged from the maze first, to thunderous applause from the crowd. But more importantly, they had successfully tested every element of their escape plan without arousing suspicion. The collar signal disruption worked. Thorek had accessed the power grid. The facility's layout had been confirmed. As teams were escorted back to temporary holding areas to rest before the second challenge, Marcus caught glimpses of satisfied faces among the Vexthara officials. The new format was exceeding expectations. That was exceptional. Overseer Zekth approached Marcus with something resembling enthusiasm. Attendance is up 30% from last week. The betting revenue alone has tripled. Arena Master Vrektal is very pleased. Thank you, Overseer. I believe the second challenge will be even more exciting. What Marcus didn't mention was that the second challenge would be entirely real, with stakes far beyond entertainment value. During the break, gladiators from all teams mingled in a common area, supervised but not closely monitored. This gave Marcus the opportunity to quietly coordinate with his extended network. A gesture here, a coded phrase there, and suddenly, a dozen gladiators across multiple teams understood their roles in what was about to unfold. Kira watched the exchanges with growing amazement. Marcus wasn't just planning an escape. He was orchestrating something approaching a military operation. Every person had a specific task. Every contingency had been considered. Every possible failure point had a backup plan. "How long have you been planning this?" she asked quietly. "Since the moment they put me in chains," Marcus replied. "But the real question isn't how long I've been planning. It's whether you're ready to stop being a victim and start being free." The question hit Kira like a physical blow. For 15 years, she had defined herself by her captivity. She was a slave, a gladiator, a survivor. But she had forgotten what she was before: a scientist, a person with dreams and goals, and the right to choose her own path. "I'm ready," she said, and meant it completely. The announcement came for the second challenge. As gladiators filed back into the arena, Marcus caught Thoric's eye. The dwarven engineer nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Everything was in place. The second challenge appeared to be a resource management exercise. Teams would be given limited supplies and tasked with building shelter, creating tools, and solving complex problems while environmental conditions gradually became more hostile. What it actually was a countdown to revolution. As Vrektal announced the beginning of the second challenge, Marcus looked around the arena one final time. In a few hours, this place of suffering and death would either become a symbol of liberation or the site of their destruction. He preferred the odds of freedom. The challenge began, and with it the most ambitious escape attempt in the history of the Vexthara Empire. The second challenge had been running for 37 minutes when everything changed. Marcus's team was working on their assigned shelter construction task, moving with deliberate purpose around the arena floor. To the thousands of spectators, they appeared to be struggling with engineering problems. In reality, every action was coordinated to position team members at strategic points throughout the facility. Thoric knelt beside what appeared to be a foundation support, but his hands were actually working through the arena floor's maintenance access panel. His fingers found the connections he had identified during the previous challenge, and with practiced precision, he began the final power grid modifications. Across the arena, Lise had positioned herself near an acoustic sweet spot where her song would resonate through the building's structure. The pain of forcing her abilities past the neural dampeners was excruciating, but she began the harmonic sequence that would disrupt collar signals facility-wide. Slicks, the Zephyrian scout, had faded into the background so completely that even the guards monitoring his position occasionally lost sight of him. He moved like smoke through the arena, reaching predetermined positions where other conspirators waited for signals. Kira found herself standing near the arena's main entrance, ostensibly gathering building materials. Her hands shook as she watched Marcus check his improvised timepiece, counting down the final moments before their point of no return. In the royal box, Arena Master Vrektal was explaining the finer points of the competition to visiting dignitaries. The betting windows showed unprecedented activity as spectators wagered on increasingly complex outcomes. No one was paying attention to the subtle positioning of gladiators across the arena floor. Marcus caught Thoric's eye and received a single nod. The power grid was ready. He looked to Lise, who, despite her obvious pain, managed to signal her readiness. Finally, he made eye contact with Kira. For a moment that lasted an eternity, she saw 15 years of captivity reflected in his eyes, along with the absolute determination to ensure this ended today, one way or another. Marcus raised his hand as if signaling his team to begin a construction sequence. Instead, it was the signal that changed everything. Thoric's modifications to the power grid activated simultaneously across 17 different junction points. Every non-essential electrical system in the facility instantly shut down. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main power grid isolated itself to prevent cascade failures. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every neural collar in the facility went into emergency reset mode, their control signals cut off from the central monitoring system. For exactly 40 minutes, 500 slaves would be free of the devices that had controlled them for years or decades. Lise's song reached crescendo at the precise moment of power disruption, her harmonics amplifying the electrical chaos throughout the building's infrastructure. Communication systems failed, security cameras went dark, and automated defense systems defaulted to lockdown protocols. The arena erupted into confusion. Spectators screamed as emergency lighting bathed everything in red. Guards rushed toward their posts, but found their communication equipment dead and their electronic access controls non-functional. Marcus's voice cut through the chaos with military authority that carried clearly across the arena floor. Now everyone knows their assignments. What followed was not a riot but a precisely coordinated military operation executed by beings who had been planning this moment for weeks. Gladiators across all 6 teams suddenly abandoned their competition, tasks, and moved with purpose toward pre-assigned objectives. Slicks materialized beside 3 guards near the main entrance, his natural camouflage allowing him to approach undetected before incapacitating them with nerve strikes, learned from Marcus. The Karathi siblings, Vex and Nex, used their combined strength to breach the arena's equipment storage, retrieving tools and improvised weapons that were immediately distributed to other escapees. Their movements were so coordinated they seemed to share a single mind. Thorek led a team of dwarven engineers toward the facility's main power plant, their decades of technical expertise allowing them to navigate darkened maintenance tunnels by touch alone. Their mission was to ensure the power disruption continued long enough for everyone to complete their assigned tasks. Meanwhile, Marcus and Kira fought their way toward the communications center. The route required passing through guard stations, administrative areas, and security checkpoints that would normally be impossible to breach, but normally no longer applied. The facility's automated systems, designed to contain external threats, had become obstacles to the guards themselves. Blast doors sealed randomly, separating response teams. Security protocols activated and deactivated unpredictably. The Vexithara's own technology had become their enemy. As they moved through darkened corridors, Kira realized that Marcus was not just leading an escape, but conducting a symphony of coordinated actions across the entire facility. Every team had specific objectives: disabling security systems, securing transportation, gathering intelligence, and ensuring no one was left behind who could be saved. "The communications center is 3 levels up," Marcus said as they reached a maintenance stairwell. "We need to send a Federation distress signal before they can restore security systems." Above them, they could hear the chaos spreading throughout the facility. Guards shouting orders in clicking Vexthara language, the sound of running footsteps. Occasional impacts as automated systems malfunctioned and created new obstacles. They climbed quickly, their enhanced conditioning from months of arena training, allowing them to ascend multiple flights without exhaustion. At each level, they encountered other escapees executing their own missions with precision that would have made any military commander proud. An ethereal named Vel had taken control of the vehicle bay, using song magic to convince automated systems that she was authorized personnel. Karathi warriors held key intersections, their natural armor allowing them to withstand guard weapons while protecting more vulnerable escapees. Even gladiators who weren't part of the original conspiracy had joined the effort, inspired by the possibility of freedom and guided by those who knew the plan. The communication center was located in the facility's administrative section, an area normally off-limits to slaves. As they approached, Marcus' hand signaled for caution. This would be the most heavily defended location in the building. They found 2 guards barricaded inside, armed with plasma rifles and protected by emergency barriers. In normal circumstances, approaching them would be suicide. Marcus studied the situation for 30 seconds, then smiled. "Kira, remember that theoretical physics education you mentioned?" "Of course. Calculate the acoustic resonance frequency for this corridor, 47 meters long. Standard Vexithara construction materials approximately 3 meters high." Kira's mind raced through equations she hadn't used in 15 years. 237 hertz assuming standard atmospheric pressure. Perfect. Marcus pulled out a piece of metal he'd acquired during their journey through the facility. "When I give the signal, start humming at exactly that frequency." The acoustic resonance, when it came, was devastating. The corridor became a resonance chamber, amplifying Kira's humming until the emergency barriers vibrated, themselves apart, and the guards inside were disoriented by the overwhelming sound. Marcus and Kira rushed the communications center as the guards stumbled. Overwhelmed by acoustic assault, their species' hearing wasn't designed to handle. Within minutes, Marcus had accessed the quantum communication array and was transmitting on restricted Federation frequencies. "This is Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chen. Terran Federation Navy, Service Number 77 Alpha 992 Delta. I am transmitting from Vexithera Military Facility Designation Unknown. Coordinates. He read off numbers from the facility's own navigation displays. Request immediate assistance. Multiple Federation citizens held in violation of Galactic Accords. Hostile environment, armed resistance expected. The response came within seconds. Commander Chen, this is Admiral Sarah Martinez aboard TFS Indomitable. We have been searching for you for 6 months. Confirm your status. Alive, unharmed, and in the middle of liberating a slave facility holding approximately 500 beings. Request full diplomatic and military response. Understood. Federation task force is already en route to your coordinates. Estimated arrival in 4 hours. 4 hours. They needed to hold their positions and keep everyone alive for 4 hours. As if reading his thoughts, Kira asked, "Can we last that long?" Marcus looked at the facility schematics displayed on the communications center screens, calculating defender positions, available resources, and possible Vexithera responses. "Ask me in 4 hours," he said. Then alarms began sounding throughout the facility as the Vexithera finally began to understand what was happening. The battle for the Vexithera facility raged for 3 hours and 47 minutes. What began as chaos gradually transformed into organized resistance as Marcus coordinated defensive positions throughout the complex. The communications center became their command post, with Kira working alongside him to track friendly positions and monitor Vexithera response patterns. The enemy's initial advantage lay in superior weapons and knowledge of the facility layout, but they faced an unprecedented situation, a coordinated uprising by 500 beings from dozens of species, each contributing unique abilities to a collective defense strategy. Ethereal song magic continued disrupting electronic systems long after the initial power grid failure. Dwarven engineers had turned maintenance tunnels into a hidden transportation network. Karathi warriors used their natural armor to hold key checkpoints while more fragile species operated from protected positions. The Zephyrians proved invaluable as scouts and saboteurs, their camouflage abilities allowing them to move unseen through enemy-held areas. Several times, crucial intelligence about guard movements came from Zephyrian observers who had positioned themselves in ventilation systems or behind decorative panels. Marcus's military training showed in every tactical decision. He divided the facility into defensive zones, assigned mixed species teams to each area, and maintained communication through a relay system that didn't depend on electronic infrastructure. When Vexithera forces concentrated on one position, he orchestrated coordinated strikes against their flanks from 3 different directions. But the most remarkable aspect of the defense was how former enemies worked together. Karathi warriors, who had fought each other in the arena, now guarded each other's backs. Ethereals, whose song magic had been used to pacify other slaves, now used those same abilities to protect their fellow prisoners. "Status report," Marcus requested as the 3rd hour of fighting began. Thorek's voice crackled through their makeshift communication system. "Engineering section secure. We've got full control of environmental systems and backup power. The Vexithera can't cut off our air or heat." "Vehicle bay operational," reported Vel, the ethereal who had taken control of their transportation assets. 17 functional craft, ranging from maintenance pods to armed patrol ships, enough to evacuate everyone if necessary. Medical station established in former gladiator quarters. Added a reptilian healer named Seth. 43 wounded, but no fatalities among our people. The absence of deaths among the escapees wasn't luck. Marcus had planned their defensive positions to minimize exposure, while maximizing the advantage of their diverse abilities. Every species contributed strengths that complemented others' weaknesses. Kira monitored enemy communications by tapping into the facility's emergency broadcast system. "The Vexithera have requested reinforcements from their orbital stations, but something is interfering with their communications." "That would be the Federation task force," Marcus explained. "They'll be running electronic warfare operations to prevent the Vexithera from coordinating a massive response." Through the communication center's external sensors, they could see Vexithera forces establishing positions around the facility's perimeter. Arena Master Rectel had apparently decided to contain the situation until superior firepower could arrive to crush the uprising. But the Arena Master had made a critical error in judgment. He assumed that escaped slaves would behave like desperate animals, making emotional decisions that could be predicted and countered. Instead, he faced an opponent who had spent 17 years conducting rescue operations in impossible situations, backed by beings who had found something worth fighting for beyond mere survival. "Commander Chen," Admiral Martinez's voice came through the quantum communication array. "Federation forces are 30 minutes out. We're reading significant energy signatures around your position. What's your tactical situation?" "Holding defensive. Positions against estimated 200 Vexithera troops with light armor support," Marcus reported. "No friendly casualties. We have control of internal facility systems and transport assets." "Understood. Prepare for close air support. Admiral Martinez out." As if responding to the promise of imminent rescue, the Vexthara launched their final assault. Plasma cannon fire began striking the facility's outer walls as armored troops advanced on multiple fronts. "They're not trying to recapture us," Kira realized, studying the attack patterns. "They're trying to destroy the facility with us inside it." Marcus nodded grimly. "Dead slaves tell no tales, and a destroyed facility looks like an industrial accident rather than a liberation." The battle intensified as Vexithara forces breached the outer perimeter. But instead of panicking, the defenders executed a coordinated withdrawal to prepared secondary positions. Every retreat was covered by supporting fire. Every defensive position was abandoned only after slowing the enemy advance and extracting maximum casualties. Thorax engineers had turned the facility's own infrastructure into a weapon. Corridor. Intersections became kill zones where environmental controls could flood areas with toxic gases or superheated steam. Maintenance tunnels allowed defenders to appear behind enemy lines, strike hard, and vanish before effective retaliation. The Vexthara found themselves fighting not just escaped slaves, but a sophisticated defensive network that seemed to anticipate their every move. 23 minutes into the final assault, everything changed. The first Federation starship appeared in the facility's external sensors, like a silver needle dropping from the stars. Then another. Within minutes, a full task force had taken positions around the planet. "This is Admiral Martinez to all Vexthara forces." Her voice boomed from every communication system in the facility. "You are in violation of 17 different galactic accords regarding treatment of sentient beings. Cease hostilities immediately and withdraw to a distance of 10 kilometers." The Vexthara response was predictable. Plasma cannon fire directed at the Federation ships. The Federation response was devastating. Precision strikes from orbit eliminated every piece of heavy equipment surrounding the facility within 30 seconds. Vexithera troops found themselves facing not just the escaped slaves, but Federation Marines dropping from assault shuttles. The fighting ended abruptly. Faced with overwhelming firepower and certain defeat, the surviving Vexithara forces surrendered. As Federation medical teams and engineers began securing the facility, Marcus found himself in the communications center with Kira, both of them staring at readouts that confirmed what seemed impossible. They had actually succeeded. 537 prisoners liberated, reported the Federation team leader, a stern-faced woman with admiral's insignia. 0 friendly fatalities during the uprising. Remarkable work, Commander. It wasn't just me, Marcus replied. Every person here contributed something essential. This was a collective effort. Admiral Martinez studied the tactical displays showing how the defense had been organized. "I've read the preliminary reports. You turned a slave uprising into a military operation that would impress Academy instructors." "How?" Marcus looked around the communications center at the beings who had made it possible. Thorek was already working. With Federation engineers to document Vexithara technology, Lice was teaching human medics how ethereal healing techniques might be adapted for other species. Even Gex, the Karathi who had started as an arena opponent, was helping coordinate the evacuation of former prisoners. "Humans have a saying," Marcus told the Admiral. "We're stronger together than we are alone." But that's not just true of humans. It's true of everyone. Kira stepped forward, still amazed at her own transformation from cowering slave to active participant in their liberation. "What happens now?" "Now," Admiral Martinez said, We make sure the galaxy knows what happened here. The Vexithara Empire will face consequences for their actions, and all of you will be returned to your homeworlds if you wish, or offered new lives in Federation space. And the arena? Kira asked, looking toward the facility where she had spent 15 years in captivity. Will be turned into a memorial, Marcus said firmly. No one else will ever suffer here again. As Federation shuttles began evacuating the former prisoners, Kira found herself standing beside Marcus in the arena, where their friendship had begun. The sand where so many had died would soon be replaced with gardens. The walls that had contained suffering would become symbols of liberation. Thank you, she said simply. Marcus smiled, the first completely relaxed expression she had ever seen on his face. Thank you for believing that freedom was possible. That's what made all the difference. Above them, Federation ships filled the sky, carrying news of the liberation across the galaxy. The Vexithara Empire's reputation for invincibility had been shattered by escaped slaves who refused to accept that their situation was permanent. For the first time in 15 years, Kira looked toward the stars and saw not the cold indifference of space, but the promise of home. The chains were broken. The story of freedom had just begun.